Chapter 301, Act of Burglary. Goofy quickly brought the 5 men near Mr. Adrian's mansion. When they got closer, they spotted a familiar figure by the backyard. Zuu! Goofy shouted. June's Rain turned around and saw Goofy and company, and she started waving at them wildly. Over here! The men came over and surrounded the lady, asking, "What are you doing here?" Goofy spied the cellar doors underneath June's Rain feet and chuckled. "You haven't given up yet, huh?" June's Rain stomped on the cellar door with both her feet. "It's very strange. They're clearly not locked, so why can't I open them?" As 5 men began inspecting the cellar doors, Goofy stood by the side and laughed. "It's a game. If the system wants the cellar doors to remain locked, no one can of course open them. What other reasons could there be?" He could hardly believe his eyes that the 5 men had sunk to June's Rain's level of intelligence. Unexpectedly, Brother Assist turned to address Goofy seriously. "You're wrong. The detail that went into creating Parallel World is really sophisticated. If there's a door that cannot be opened, a reason must surely exist behind it." With that, the 5 men continued examining the double doors. "Could it be because they are too heavy?" Royal Godcall tugged on the doors as he said this. "Let me give it a shot." War Without Wounds stood up, and June's Rain gazed at him expectantly. Goofy was speechless. June's Rain was an all-strength build warrior. Given how War Without Wounds was a veteran warrior, so he would certainly not adopt such an extreme stat point distribution. Therefore, despite his thick-set figure, his strength might not even be on par with June's Rain's. If she could not pull the doors open, why would he be able to? Just as Goofy had expected, War Without Wounds used all his strength to tug at the cellar doors for the longest time before concluding, "They're not heavy, they just can't be opened." TSK. Goofy scoffed audibly. Brother Assist closely inspected the gap between the door and its frame, as well as the hinges, but found nothing unusual. Finally, he mumbled, "Could magic be in play here, preventing these doors from being opened with force and requiring people to use a special method or item to open them? Mr. Adrian is indeed special." They all trembled in excitement and looked at the NPC's mansion with glistening eyes. "Mr. Adrian is currently not at home," June's Rain supplied. "Oh!" Goofy exclaimed, saying, "No wonder you dared rummage through his things in the backyard. Hee hee. It's been quite some time." June's Rain boasted. "This is our chance." Royal Godcall slapped his thigh, saying, "Mr. Adrian is not at home. Let's search inside his mansion. Perhaps we can find a scroll or something that can open these cellar doors. Let's." War Without Wounds was already walking toward Mr. Adrian's mansion. "Hey!" Goofy reminded them, "Did we come here to look for Mr. Adrian or open these cellar doors?" This was when the excited pair slapped their foreheads. "Oh, yeah." They then turned to ask June's Rain, "Ahem. Do you happen to know where Mr. Adrian is?" June's Rain shook her head, albeit it seemed that Royal Godcall's previous words had given her an epiphany. "She was here to open these cellar doors." Young Master Han spoke up as she left to break into the mansion and rummage through it. "I know where Mr. Adrian is." "How do you know?" "Where?" Everyone turned to look at him. Young Master Han tapped one of the cellar doors with his foot. "What's that for?" Just as this question was asked, the cellar doors creaked open. Everyone leapt back in surprise as a man holding a lantern emerged from the cellar. He used his free hand to support his weight by propping it against the ground. Young Master Han was now looking at the other 5 men. If the door can't be opened when it's not locked, the most likely explanation is that someone has locked it from within. They all lowered their heads in embarrassment, especially Brother Assist. All that explanation about the doors being charmed. It seemed that knowing too much might not necessarily be a good thing at times. "Ahem. So this person is Mr. Adrian?" Brother Assist changed the focus of the conversation by asking Goofy about the NPC that had emerged from the cellar. "Yup. He looks exactly the same as I remembered." Mr. Adrian discovered the players around him after coming out of the cellar and reacted like how any NPC would. Craning his neck, he demanded, "Who are you people? What are you doing inside my property?" No one bothered to answer him. He was just a programmed AI, so who would care about the attitude this NPC was treating them with? Only the quest maniac June's Rain would. It was a pity, though, that she was no longer around, as she had broken inside Mr. Adrian's mansion from the front door and was currently ransacking his place. Honestly speaking, that was the right way to play a rebounds per game. What should we do? Do we take him out here and now? Brother Assist asked. I don't think that's a good idea. Would killing Mr. Adrian and telling the werewolves about the resolution of their blackmailing issue complete my quest? Goofy asked. I don't think that's going to work. We have to at least provide some evidence, Sword Demon opined. How are we going to prove that this guy is the one manipulating the strings behind the scene? Everyone was now examining Mr. Adrian. Although the six of them were pretty much ignoring his existence, Mr. Adrian still continued to shout at them. Who are you people? What are you doing inside my property? What nonsense are you guys spouting? Can we even attack him without proof of his evil deeds? Young Master Han asked. You are right. Every NPC is protected from getting fucked. This special protection will only be removed when certain conditions of a quest are met, Brother Assist affirmed. The six of them pondered on this matter as they surrounded Mr. Adrian. This was when June's Rain came out of the mansion while shaking her head. I didn't find anything that can open the cellar doors. These men looked at one another before running inside Mr. Adrian's mansion together. They could hear Mr. Adrian shouting from behind them, What are you people doing? You bunch of burglars. The burglars began ransacking through Mr. Adrian's mansion at top speed. Unfortunately, they did not find anything that would give them a hint about Mr. Adrian's evil scheme. All of them walked out of the mansion while sorrowfully shaking their heads just like June's Rain. You group of burglars. Adrian angrily pointed at them. I'm going to report you. I'm going to report all of you. With that, Adrian rushed off. Are we in trouble? Brother Assist was of course the first to panic. Would he call the guards over? Royal Godcall was the next to speak up. Has anyone exchanged blows with NPC guards before? War Without Wounds asked. Everyone turned to look at Goofy. He was a PvP addict. After all, guards would be sent to pursue him once his park value went beyond 20 points. However, Goofy merely shook his head. I've only been chased by NPC guards. I never dared to trade blows with them. Everyone sucked in a cold breath when they heard this. If even Goofy did not dare to fight the NPC guards, then they were certainly fearsome when it came to fighting. Are they that powerful? Royal Godcall asked. I don't know, but many of them are surely on their way now, Goofy replied. They looked at one another. In the silence that ensued, the act of flipping through a book sounded somewhat loud. Looking at the origin of the flipping sound, they saw young Master Han step out of the mansion with an old journal in his hand. He was currently rifling through it. What's that? The men crowded around him. A ledger, young Master Han replied. What did you discover? Everyone asked. Nothing, actually. Still, it has Mr. Adrian's handwriting, young Master Han told them. Everyone put two and two together and turned to address Goofy. Where's that letter you got? I passed it to Oathless Sword. Goofy was dismayed. He was too much of a goody two-shoes sometimes. But does any of us even know how to analyze handwriting? He asked. It's useless even if we could. That sort of skill that a player might possess won't affect the quest plot like this. If it's a particular clue, it will surely require skill in game, such as the appraisal skill, Brother Assist said. Appraisal skill? Can the appraisal skill be used for handwriting analysis? It was just an example, Brother Assist replied. Maybe not the appraisal skill a player uses, but it might be possible for an NPC who is a master appraiser, young Master Han said. That makes sense. But the problem is that we don't have the note with us. Let's get it from Oathless Sword, then. Why won't he give it to us when we are trying to help him complete the quest? War Without Wounds asked rhetorically. Hee. Young Master Han suddenly chuckled. The five men got goosebumps on their skin once they saw the smile on his lips. What have you thought of now? I thought of a method to make Oathless Sword return the letter to us, young Master Han answered. Needless to say, I'm sure it's a very despicable method. They five men shook their heads repeatedly. Young Master Han did not say a word, merely sending Youthful Reflection a message. We've found a huge lead. Fuck. Youthful Reflection treated this message as bad news as he turned to Oathless Sword with tears streaming down his cheeks. Young Master's elite has gotten a head start. Don't panic. Oathless Sword was still rather calm, saying, this is our quest, so the initiative still lies in our hands. Even if he found a lead, There's no telling that I would accept it. This quest has just begun. Hold in your emotion and briefly negotiate with him. Youthful Reflection waited for quite some time before calmly replying, "Oh, what lead is this?" "We need the letter," young Master Han said, instead. "What for?" Youthful Reflection unhurriedly asked him. Actually, real, good to honest mercenaries were expected to directly inform their employers of any discovery. However, in reality, most mercenaries would not do such a thing. Even the employers themselves would not make such a demand from their mercenaries, resulting in the simple exchange becoming a contest of wits. Young Master Han had often used any opportunity to make a killing off of traversing four seas. This time, however, he immediately told Youthful Reflection that the villager, Mr. Adrian, was acting extremely suspicious and they wanted to use the note to reveal his despicable plot. Youthful Reflection was hesitant to trust his words, but he figured that it would not hurt to try. Soon, they quickly brought the note to the mansion near the church in Yaguang village. "But Mr. Adrian isn't around right now," the others exclaimed in puzzlement when they heard young Master Han's words. "And that's precisely what we want." Young Master Han laughed. Chapter 302, The Clueless Traversing Four Seas. Young Master's Elite's 6 men dragged Ziyu to hide by the courtyard of the nearby dilapidated church. All of them crouched by the church's wall as they staked out Mr. Adrian's mansion. Soon, players of Traversing Four Seas arrived from every direction and surrounded the premise. Finally, the 3 core leaders, Oathless Sword, Youthful Reflection, and Gale Force, made it to the place and began positioning their guild members. The airhead June's Rain felt very confused. Mr. Adrian is not here, so what are they trying to do? It was difficult to keep June's Rain up to speed with their thoughts, so the 6 men chose to stay silent. Instead, only Brother Assist was a little anxious about everything. "Won't Mr. Adrian be back soon?" MHM. "Didn't he say he's off to call the guards?" "What do you think he'll do at the sight of many players cordoning off his mansion when he gets back with the guards?" Young Master Han asked. Everyone could feel chill run down their spines. "Isn't this going a bit overboard?" "No. It's very interesting." Young Master Han happily propped himself up against the wall using his arm. He then fished out a bottle of liquor from his dimensional pocket using his free hand. It was evident that he wanted to pair his drinking with the pitiful plight the Traversing Four Seas players would soon find themselves in. Traversing Four Seas completed their cordon of the mansion. Holding the note in his hand, Oathless Sword took a deep breath and knocked on the door thrice before he darted behind the formation, making people wonder if he was truly a warrior with how quickly he had moved. Obviously, no one was going to answer the door since the mansion was currently empty. These players started looking at one another in confusion after waiting anxiously for quite some time. Oathless Sword went forward and knocked on the door again. He did not rush to retreat behind the safety of his troops this time. Instead, Oathless Sword went up to the door and placed his ear right on its surface in an attempt to hear any sound coming from inside the mansion. Youthful Reflection and Gale Force followed suit. Eventually, the 3 men shook their heads. "Shall we go in and take a look?" The 3 men exchanged glances before breaking in. He. The 6 peeping men were giggling in their mirth. "What are they doing there? Are they planning to steal gold ore, too?" It was now June's Rain's turn to feel anxious. "Nah, they're here to look for someone," Gufei consoled her. June's Rain was instantly pacified. Indeed, it was very easy to placate naive people. Oathless Sword and the other 2 entered Mr. Adrian's mansion and searched around it, but they could naturally not find anything suspicious. The trio saw that the place was a bit messy, but they could presently not think of why it would be so, and they walked out of the mansion filled with confusion. The 6 men were all snickering by now. Suddenly, they heard someone outside the Traversing Four Seas cordon yell, "Who are you people?" The 6 men subconsciously jerked their necks back when they heard this. Mr. Adrian had finally returned. Gufei amended to June's Rain, "Hear that? The revived Mr. Adrian is still the same as ever, and his voice is just like last time." "Revived?" June's Rain asked, confused. "Never mind." Gufei forcefully calmed himself. All craned their necks out to continue peeping. Although they originally thought that young Master Han had gone a little overboard when he purposefully set up the Traversing Four Seas against the NPC guards Mr. Adrian had called over, The sight of Mr. Adrian all by himself made them feel rather disappointed. Brother Assist glumly kept his little booklet, and here I thought I would finally get a chance to gauge a NPC guard's strength. Before Oathless Sword could even send out the command himself, the Traversing Four Seas players had already taken the initiative to surround Mr. Adrian. Oathless Sword walked over in a dignified manner and waved the note in front of the NPC. Mr. Adrian, we already know what you've done. Why don't you give yourself up? All the players present felt very nervous, and this included the 6 men of Young Master's elite. Oathless Sword was undoubtedly displaying an item to the NPC. Whether this would trigger any condition for the quest or not would entirely depend on this one move. In the end, the NPC Adrian did not even glance at the note in Oathless Sword's hand and merely continued to angrily point at the men surrounding him. You burglars! Just what do you all intend to do? Oathless Sword stepped even closer to Mr. Adrian and pushed the note right up to the latter's eyes. Read it. The note. He was already using the item as blatantly as possible, yet Mr. Adrian was still ignoring his action. The Traversing Four Seas members were disappointed. It seemed that the item was useless in this place. The 6 men of Young Master's elite felt very gratified by this outcome. Had Mr. Adrian allowed Traversing Four Seas to expose him this easily, they would have pretty much busied themselves with the quest for nothing. Mr. Adrian was still trapped inside the players' encirclement as the 3 core members of Traversing Four Seas had an emergency meeting, resulting in Youthful Reflection hailing Young Master Han. The note is useless. Is that so? That can't be. Young Master Han faked his disbelief. Are you guys sure that he's the one? Youthful Reflection continued to ask. Of course, Young Master Han replied. The 3 men continued to discuss the matter among themselves. Do you guys have any proof? Youthful Reflection asked. Isn't the note itself the proof? Young Master Han asked back. But he didn't admit to it. Youthful Reflection exclaimed. Think of ways to force him to confess, then. Young Master Han suggested. Youthful Reflection slapped his forehead, and then he thought of the same method of analyzing and comparing Mr. Adrian's handwriting. Thus, the 3 core members of Traversing Four Seas entered Mr. Adrian's mansion again and began ransacking his place. Burglars! You're all nothing but a bunch of burglars. You people are going to pay for your actions. Mr. Adrian continued to act his part and angrily berated the players. Young Master Han reached inside his dimensional pocket and touched Mr. Adrian's ledger, feeling quite pleased with himself. He eagerly awaited Youthful Reflection's good news. There isn't another copy of Mr. Adrian's handwriting inside the mansion, right? Brother Assist worriedly asked. Nope. Young Master Han confidently answered. You're so nasty. The rest of them sighed. He was essentially forcing Traversing Four Seas to compromise with him. After searching through Mr. Adrian's possession for another round, the 3 men came out empty-handed. The 3 men were left with no choice but to take out a paper and pen and fiercely demand for Mr. Adrian to copy the note from where he stood. Such a trashy method was basically a direct attempt to take advantage of the NPC's rigid AI. Unfortunately, Adrian was someone who bore a heavy responsibility. He demonstrated a more sophisticated programming than the average NPC when he ignored their demand outright. Oathless Sword wished he could throttle Mr. Adrian right there and then, but no one could unfortunately go around breaking the system's rule protecting NPCs from violent player interactions. At such an impasse, Young Master Han's message arrived with cold indifference. How did it go? We're still working on it, was Youthful Reflection's reply. Perhaps you should let our mercenary group's 1,000 miles drunk interact with Mr. Adrian. After all, he is the one who obtained the side quest, Young Master Han suggested. What he had said made perfect sense, game-wise. Oathless Sword dangling the letter in front of Mr. Adrian was ineffective, but it might be a different matter if Gufei was the one dangling it. At the end of the day, the quest and the item were obtained by him. Furthermore, Oathless Sword and his 2 core leaders were aware of another piece of important information that Gufei did not know. The werewolves had explicitly said that they only trusted him. Does that mean our only option is to depend on that guy for this part of the quest? Oathless Sword and his men were naturally aggrieved by this. Why don't we just let him have a go? Gale Force asked. Has anyone found any method to win the werewolves' trust yet? Youthful Reflection asked everyone else. When all the guild members shook their heads, Youthful Reflection grinded his teeth and told Young Master Han to send Gufei over, Fine, let him have a go. Maybe this quest will end once Miles uses that node to interact with Mr. Adrian, Royal God Call said. I doubt that. Brother Assist shook his head, saying, there shouldn't be this sort of condition for all the quests in Parallel World. The identity of Miles is only unique to those werewolves. Any other NPC, just like Mr. Adrian, won't treat him differently. Logically speaking, he doesn't have any special interactions with this brand new Adrian, so he won't treat Miles differently. Let me find out. Goofy was planning to ask Fleeting Smile about this, but he discovered that the latter had already gone offline when he pulled out his friends list. Okay, I didn't manage to find anything out. You guys can carry on discussing. Brother Assist was very curious about the person whom Goofy was getting his information from, as that individual seemed to have a bigger information network than him, but Goofy had already said to him that he could not reveal anything about the person. Truthfully, there's no guarantee that we can even resolve this matter by analyzing his handwriting. War Without Wounds said. Are you questioning my deduction skills? Young Master Han tossed him a sidelong glance. Don't mind me. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, that's all. Ha ha ha. War Without Wounds quickly tried to laugh it off. What nonsense, everyone scoffed. Alright, I'm heading over now. Goofy stood up. Slow down. If you get there so soon, they'll think that we are just spying on them from nearby this whole time, Royal God Call cautioned. Goofy looked at him with a baffled expression. But we are hiding over here to spy on them. That's why you gotta hide it. How can we call this spying if you are gonna expose it? The rest of them nodded their heads in agreement. Wait a bit longer before you head over. June's Rain's eyes were glazed over this whole time, not understanding a word that they were saying. As such, they intentionally waited for quite some time, receiving a few more messages from Youthful Reflection asking young Master Han to hurry Goofy over. Goofy moved to go to them. This was when a flurry of footsteps was heard coming from the main road. All of them craned their necks to look and were stunned by what they saw. Dozens of guards clad in armor emblazoned with Y City's seal just so happened to arrive at this moment. The Traversing Four Seas players, for their part, were clueless on why these unidentified NPCs were hurrying to their location. Such a scale of mobilization of NPCs was a rare sight, and these players could not help but ogle them as they marched toward them. Some of the Traversing Four Seas players even attempted to engage the NPCs in a conversation. Brother Assist already had his little booklet out and ready, as young Master Han repeatedly nodded his head. What did I tell you all? How could my deductions ever be wrong? Mr. Adrian. The guard hollered. All the Traversing Four Seas members present were startled. Adrian, who was still neck-deep in the encirclement, shouted back, Sir, I'm right here. Hurry and eradicate these burglars for me. Burglars? While the Traversing Four Seas players were still feeling confused, the NPC guards' swords were already out of their scabbards. Raising his weapon, the captain bellowed, prepared to charge. In an instant, white light dispersed from the captain and a halo could be seen glowing beneath the feet of the guards around him. How up! A party ride skill. The people secretly watching this scene from afar were the first to react to this. Chapter 303, The Dauntless Guards. The NPC guards were currently using a never-before-seen party ride skill. Hearing their captain's command, these NPC guards instantly positioned themselves to charge forward. The Traversing Four Seas members were truly rather pitiful. On top of not knowing why these unidentified NPCs were moving to attack them, just as they were asking one another questions, such as what burglars? And who are they calling burglars? The NPCs proceeded to charge right at them, overwhelming them all. Fuck! The players cried out in dismay. They were truly at a loss on how to deal with this bunch of emotionless A.I.'S that was currently charging at them. The NPC guards enveloped in white light charged toward the players in a wedge formation at first before changing into a horizontal formation next. These city guards effectively disrupted the Traversing Four Seas ranks as they rampaged about with impunity, leaving the players rather helpless. Plenty of players were even sent flying upward upon contact, creating an exaggeratedly chaotic scene. He. Young Master's Elite was overwhelmed with mirth at this point. Brother Assist recorded everything as quickly as possible on his little booklet while muttering incessantly, "This is truly vicious. Absolutely malicious. Oh, the humanity. Royal God Call feigned horror at the scene unfolding before him by shutting his two eyes jokingly. Did we perhaps go a bit overboard? Sword Demon could not really stand the slaughter happening before him. Our hands are tied. How can we even stop this now? Young Master Han actually sighed when he said this. Nothing we can do now, Gu Fei chipped in. Even he felt utterly useless in the face of these indomitable NPC guards. Be it their charging formation or attacking style, all the moves were executed seamlessly and in perfect sync. This was one area where no person could compete against the AI. Who knew how long and arduous would humans have to train to achieve such level of prowess as this bunch of A.I.'S. There was a phrase Kung Fu practitioners would often use to describe such opponent: an enemy with no weak point. While there were ways to forcefully create an opening in an opponent, a certain level of strength and skill would still be required to accomplish this. Who knew how high these guards' level was? It was entirely probable for each of them to possess the strength of a boss. Since they were currently moving as a team, not even the level 40 Gu Fei would stand a chance against them. He might be a formidable fighter in real life, but he was currently in a MMORPG. Ultimately, everything in it was dictated by the level and type of equipment one had, and skills alone could not make up for those. The Traversing 4Cs players would of course not just allow themselves to be ripped apart by these NPC guards without putting up a fight. They did their best to evade the guards assaulting them and backed themselves into formation in accordance to the order of Youthful Reflection, their de facto leader at times like this. Youthful Reflection was currently shouting himself hoarse as he flooded the guild channel with messages: Archer formation. Archer formation. This particular formation was something that he had researched and drilled into the guild members himself, so it was something that he was very proud of. That's Traversing 4Cs for you. They've always got a few tricks up their sleeves, the 6 men commended. With the warriors and similar job classes tanking the NPC guards' attacks, the Traversing 4Cs archer formation was completely set up. Following this, the mages prepared to begin their spell bombardment. Fire away. Youthful Reflection could no longer afford to wait for a perfect opportunity. Seeing that they had enough archers in place, he immediately commanded them to attack. The sky was blotted with arrows as they flew toward the NPCs. The first wave of arrows momentarily halted the NPCs' frontal assault. As the Traversing 4Cs players were finally seeing a sliver of hope with their first assault, they heard the captain of the opposing side yell out, "Protect our charge." The NPCs each pulled out a shield when they heard this command and firmly placed them in front. Following this, the Traversing 4Cs' second wave of arrows sailed through the air. Charge! The guards hid behind their shields and placed their swords beside the shields as they surged toward the players. Shameless! The Traversing 4Cs members were in tears as the formation that they had painstakingly set up was easily demolished by the NPCs. Based on the character designs for the various job classes in Parallel World, only the Guardians, the job class known for its high HP and low offense, were capable of using shields to defend themselves. And yet, these NPC guards were able to demonstrate an indomitable offense with their swords alone, since they could also use shields to defend themselves. What else could the system be but shameless for allowing these NPCs to possess high offense and defense? This was technically no different from combining magic and martial arts together. Even young Masters Elite felt shocked at this kind of development. As Brother Assist continued to record everything down, he could not help but wonder, what exactly is the job class of these NPC guards? Are they warriors or knights? As the others shook their heads in confusion, he said, "I'm going to head over and use my appraisal skill to find out." "There's no need for that," Royal God Call stopped him, saying, "The guild channel is in an uproar right now. Plenty of players have tried appraising them, yet all they got is a bunch of question marks." "They must be pretty high level, then," Brother Assist exclaimed. The 6 men returned their focus on the fighting field. The battered members of Traversing 4Cs were beginning to understand the situation, and many of them cried out in shock, "They are Y City's guards." Seals, emblems, and such were used in Parallel World to categorize or separate the various organizations from one another. Naturally, each in-game city had its respective seal, which was displayed all over the streets and hung on various government structures. The image that was emblazoned across the NPC guards' shields was the very same seal of Y City. However, Although these players had finally managed to identify their opponents, they were still clueless as to why these NPCs were attacking them. Everyone could simply not fathom how they had offended Y City's NPC guards, which resulted into their current disastrous predicament. With the collapse of the Traversing 4Cs Archer formation, any other forms of resistance that they tried to employ were easily suppressed by the NPC guards. Whether they used their mages to bombard the ground, sent their thieves in stealth mode to sneak attack, or made their warriors clash head-on with the NPC guards, there was only one outcome whenever they made contact. Every player was sent flying outward. Player after player of Traversing 4Cs was sent flying outward. In the end, all of them no longer bothered to follow their boss's orders and instead strove to escape the place using any possible routes. Oathless Sword and the other two men lost their will to resist as well, and each of them took the remaining players with them to flee. The NPC guards did not give chase to the fleeing Traversing 4Cs players and just stayed where they were. In a short while, the only remaining players in the area were the heavily injured. "Did you guys realize something?" Brother Assist asked in wonder. Not one player died even after taking their devastating frontal assault. "I've already noticed that long ago," young Master Han said dryly. No matter when or how, players would always depart in white lights when their HP dropped to zero. Thus far, the only white light that they had seen was the very same one enveloping the NPC guards. Not one player of Traversing 4Cs had contributed to this. After such a slightly drawn-out fight, the players had merely fallen to the ground, injured, and were only subdued. In the next moment, the NPC guard captain in charge of the operation commanded, "Bring them to the prison." "Yes, sir," the NPC guards obediently said. These NPCs proceeded to gather all the subdued players and line them up. Using an unknown method of suppression, they prevented any players from resisting their arrest. The captain formally bowed to Mr. Adrian before departing with the NPC guards along with the apprehended players. Everyone in Young Master's elite was left flabbergasted. Even young Master Han had not expected such an outcome when he had set the two parties to collide. What do those NPCs mean? Where are they bringing the players to? Everyone urged Royal God Call to find out from the Traversing 4Cs Guild channel. "There's no news there." None of the captured players sent out a message at all, Royal God Call informed the others after he had checked through the Guild channel. Is this similar to players being jailed, with their contact to others restricted? Brother Assist postulated. "So all those men are gonna be sent to prison? How long will they be gone for?" As the 6 men were discussing this, all of them inadvertently left their hiding place by the church courtyard and watched the leaving figures of the NPC guards with the captured men. This odd procession of NPCs and players attracted quite a number of onlookers along the way. None of the other Traversing 4Cs members dared to go near the procession for fear of getting captured as well. Other players who were curious and wanted to ask the captured men a few questions were stopped by the NPC guards. Anyone who refused to heed their warning was sent flying outward. "It's a huge mistake to go up against the NPCs," was the conclusion Brother Assist had arrived to after all this. Brother Assist sighed heavily as he closed the booklet in his hand. "You better be careful when you PvP next time." "You've just witnessed the might of the NPC guards. War without wounds," warned Gufei. "There are usually few guards around the city," Gufei reasoned. "It's only a matter of time before a pack of guards pursue a park maniac like you," Royal God Call taunted. "As someone who has accrued so much felony to his name, they'll probably just kill him on sight," War Without Wounds added. The 6 men's conversation had digressed to something completely irrelevant. Young Master Han took this chance to get everyone back on track. "Enough of this nonsense, time for us to get back to business." Business? Witnessing such a high-level fight had made these men forget what they were in the location for. "Let me contact Youthful Reflection," young Master Han said while rolling his eyes. In the end, he did not receive even one reply. Youthful Reflection was clearly online, yet not one word of response came from him. Did that guy get himself apprehended as well? Everyone wondered. The note happened to be in his possession, right? These mercenaries exchanged looks. "What's the rush?" young Master Han asked, seeing what has just happened to Traversing 4Cs, it's obvious that the quest can't continue today. Let's just head back first. Yeah, it's about time for me to log out, anyway. Gu Fei glanced at the time. He did not manage to get anything done tonight beyond running back and forth for the quest. The 6 men of Young Master's elite prepared to head back to Chai City, while June's Rain happily rushed inside Mr. Adrian's mansion to resume her research of the underground cellar. She had apparently not given up her objective all this while. The NPC guards that had apprehended a few Traversing Forces members loomed ahead as they marched toward Y City. The 6 men of Young Master's elite coincidentally met the other members of Traversing Forces on their way back to the city. Oathless Sword and Gale Force were bringing some members back to the city as well. Their sullen gazes were fixed on the others that had been apprehended by the NPC guards in front of them. They remained listless even when they saw the 6 men of Young Master's elite, and not one of them could even manage the feeblest smile. Guild leader Oathless, Young Master Han greeted the other first. Mercenary leader Han, Oathless Sword weakly returned the greeting. What happened? Young Master Han pointed to the troops in front. Why are some of your men together with those NPCs? I've sent youthful reflection messages, yet I haven't gotten even one reply from him. Young Master Han callously asked this question despite knowing what had just happened to Traversing Forces. For his fellow mercenaries who knew the truth of the matter, Young Master Han seemed to be strongly asking for a beating. Chapter 304, Y City's Master Appraise. A Ruthless Sword narrated Traversing Forces' recent ordeal to Young Master's elite in a plaintive tone. The 6 men felt pain inside as Oathless Sword was recounting the unfortunate incident to them, yet that pain was not because of sadness but because of having to prevent themselves from bursting into laughter. As soon as Oathless Sword finished his narration, he asked the 6 men for their take on the matter. What do you think has caused this? The 6 of them looked at one another. Young Master Han coughed before answering, maybe this is part of the quest. That's what we think, too. In fact, we are following them to find out what's going to happen to them, Oathless Sword said. It was just as everyone had expected in the end. The bunch of players that the NPC guards had captured were marched straight into prison upon their return to Y City, and amid everyone's watchful gazes, these players disappeared inside the prison entrance. Although imprisonment would forcefully restrict all manners of communication, Parallel World had a feature that allowed others to visit prisoners. Naturally, money was required to do this. Provided that the fee was paid, any player could enter the cell and do anything with the convicted, except for bailing them out. There was no time limit for this either, much to the delight of those couples who could not bear spending even a second away from their other halves. Oathless Sword only crept over once he saw the NPC guards leave upon locking up his underlings in the prison. He approached the place with as much apprehension as he had when he was earlier knocking on Mr. Adrian's door. While 30% of him was heading forward, 70% of him was already preparing to bolt out. He was worried that the system would identify him as the boss of the convicted players and detain him as well. His worry turned out to be unfounded, though, as the prison guards merely continued on their usual tasks, unfazed by Oathless Sword's presence. After paying the fee for this visit, Oathless Sword entered the cell to talk to his comrades. The imprisoned players were as clueless about this as Oathless Sword. The only thing they knew more than him was that they had to spend 4 hours inside the cell. The system did not provide them any explanation for their imprisonment, though. All they heard was the NPCs referring to them as felons whenever they conversed with one another, causing everyone to feel mortified at being labeled as such. From their perspective, the only thing they were guilty of was surrounding Mr. Adrian. Such an action should not warrant them being sent to prison, though. When did NPCs have such rights, anyway? Those imprisoned were absolutely incensed by this. Oathless Sword was already downcast when he entered the prison, yet he looked much worse when he finally exited it. He stared blankly at the members of Young Master's elite that had been waiting for him just outside the prison. Eventually, he woke from his reverie and asked the 6 men, "Is there anything else?" Young Master Han sighed, "Did you forget? We're here for the note you wanted Miles to test out with Mr. Adrian." Oh. Oathless Sword was out of it at the moment, so he did not think deeply about this and just handed the note over to Gu Fei. "How long are they inside for?" Gu Fei asked when he took the note from him. 4 hours. Oathless Sword answered. "So I guess we can't continue the quest today?" Gu Fei probed. Oathless Sword nodded his head and turned his attention to Young Master Han. "Can you contact the other mercenary leaders?" As Young Master Han shook his head, Oathless Sword looked absolutely broken now. Goddamn, I still have to inform all those people about this. Evidently, it had always been Youthful Reflections' responsibility to contact the mercenary leaders about anything. Guild leader Oathless Sword did not seem to know how to handle such trivialities. Shall we continue this matter tomorrow, too? Goofy was now waving the note to Oathless Sword. Of course, Oathless Sword felt a slight twinge of annoyance at the sight of the note, wishing he could just get rid of it. After exchanging a few words with young Master's elite, he led his remaining men away from the place. The 6 men could hear him grumbling all the way and his words were littered with expletives. Should we go and test it out now? Goofy sought the 5's advice regarding the note. Of course. Otherwise, there's no way I'm getting any sleep tonight, Brother Assist answered. Do you guys even sleep at night? Goofy asked, skeptical. What nonsense. The 5 men chided Goofy for not viewing them as humans. Inquiring to the locals along the way, the 6 men finally located the system-assigned Master Appraiser in Y City. She was a witch wearing a half-mask and was in charge of teaching every player in the city about the appraisal skill. Take at the ledger. Goofy nudged young Master Han. Wait a second. Brother Assist called out. What? Everyone looked at him questioningly. Would give this a shot first. To find out if this quest requires someone who has a pre-established relationship with the werewolves like Miles to complete, Brother Assist said. Let's find out what is the logic behind Parallel World's damnable design. By your words, you can't be the one to test it out. You and Miles have come into contact with the werewolves, so common sense dictates that you would most likely be included in Miles' quest. Sword Demon reasoned. That's true, Brother Assist nodded his head in agreement. I'll test it, instead. Sword Demon took the note and ledger from them. Goofy watched this team of experts at work, slightly moved by their dedication to researching the game. How great would it be if there were more people like them that were equally passionate about Kung Fu? Sword Demon presented the ledger and note to the Master Appraiser and requested for her to analyze if the handwriting in both items matched. Just as they were worrying about the NPC not understanding the instruction, the witch brought her 2 fingers upright, instead, 200 gold coins. Fuck. The 6 men cursed. That's so shameless. Profiteer. Despicable. The system's greed knows no bounds. Is money the only thing the gaming company cares about? They flung insults at the system for almost 10 minutes before Sword Demon feebly interjected, Hey, are we still having these items analyzed or what? Of course, we are. A sheep's wool grows on a sheep one, after all, young Master Han replied. Thus, Sword Demon forked out the fee of 200 gold coins and handed the sum over to the Master Appraiser along with the ledger and note. The Master Appraiser glanced briefly at the note before flipping through the ledger noisily. Just as the 6 were starting to wonder which page she would stop at, the Master Appraiser returned the 2 items to Sword Demon and declared, It's the same handwriting. The entire process of analyzing the handwriting did not take longer than 5 seconds. The 6 men did not even get to experience the anxiety that came with not knowing what the final outcome would be. They spent 200 gold coins just like that, yet they did not even get to properly enjoy any bit of thrill from this. They could not help but feel that the system was being too cheap. The system should at least show them the process of analyzing the handwriting since it was charging such a high price. Such perfunctory action left them thoroughly unsatisfied. Whatever the case might be, the system's action clearly proved 2 things. First, Mr. Adrian was indeed the one pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Second, Goofy was not the only one who could complete the quest. Therefore, young Master Han absconding with Mr. Adrian's ledger had truly brought traversing 4C's unnecessary trouble. Have we completed this quest? Will we get Mr. Adrian's confession if we head back now? Sword Demon asked everyone. These men were still suspicious. The logic behind Parallel World was hardly congruent with reality. Things would progress according to how reality worked at times, and matters would rigidly be constrained according to how MMO worked at other times. It was this unpredictability that tortured the players endlessly. Choosing to play it safe, the 6 men requested the Master Appraiser to provide evidence to back her findings that the writer of the note and ledger was the same person. They believed that any proof she provided them would automatically cause Mr. Adrian to confess. Proof? My word is all the proof you need. the master appraiser said haughtily. The 6 men left the premise in great displeasure after being regarded so contemptuously by NPC. Should we see Mr. Adrian now? Let's go, no way I'm getting any sleep if we don't. Thus, the 6 men once more rushed toward Yaguang village, meeting quite a few Yanjuan City players along the way. After being informed that the quest could not continue today by Oathless Sword, these players felt very unhappy at essentially having wasted a whole night in game doing nothing. Looks like traversing 4 seas has offended quite a lot of players due to this quest, Brother Assist commented as he looked at the disgruntled faces around them. They're lacking in the necessary qualities of professional mercenaries, young Master Han said. As the 5 men looked at him, he added, us included. TSK. Everyone scorned. There's no way to inculcate unity into this mess of mercenary groups, anyway. The Traversing 4 Seas players should thank their lucky stars if they do succeed in this guild quest. Them failing would be entirely due to this very fact. Just you wait and see, young Master Han predicted. Why are you like this? You seem to actually be wishing for them to fail. Gufei remarked. I'm just disappointed with the situation we've found ourselves in. They hired all these mercenaries for the quest, yet they don't show enough trust in us. He. Did they really think money is enough to make everyone work for them? They just don't have the right qualities to be the boss, young Master Han scoffed. I think you're just overthinking things again. Gufei said, adding, it may not be the lack of trust, but rather your frequent extortion attempts that have caused them to be fearful, causing them to avoid us. This whole situation is whacked. Extortion? You can hardly say that the meager sum we've gotten from them is that. They're merely jealous of us being the ones to resolve their problems at crucial moments. This is exactly why they've refused our help time and time again. Honestly, we are just 6 men. Do you really think the fee that they are paying us is more than that of the Black Hand's 100 men? Far from it. I say, we are only costing them probably just 20 of their men. That's ridiculous. Gufei was now pissed. Just I alone can take down 20 men at the Black Hand. That's what I've been telling you. We haven't been extorting really. The price I've given them has been extremely reasonable. Young Master Han justified himself. Sword Demon, who had been standing beside him all this while, nudged him. You did extort money from them, though. After all, you hid that ledger from them just then. Young Master Han eyed him with disdain. That's not extortion, that's competition. Everyone was simply speechless. Chapter 305, Encircling to suppress Mr. Adrian. The departure of Yanjuan City's players in Yaguang village made it appear exceptionally deserted. The NPCs were just standing on their assigned positions, never running or chattering about like what players would often do. No one spoke a word as the 6 men made their way toward Mr. Adrian's mansion. Upon their arrival to his place, a familiar figure busying about promptly greeted their sight. That lady sure is very persistent. Everyone was in awe. Ziu. Gufei hollered as he waved his hand. June's Rain, who was laboring hard in Mr. Adrian's backyard, turned around and saw the 6 men drawing near her. Casually wiping the sweat off her brows, she waved back at them in greeting. That one gesture shattered the rather attractive sweaty look she had going, as though her face became instantly pixelated. What are you doing now? Gufei came forward and asked. June's Rain was currently half buried in soil at the moment. I'm about to dig out a passage to infiltrate Mr. Adrian's cellar from this side. What do you think? Pretty ingenious, eh? June's Rain boasted. Will it work? Gufei asked haltingly. I won't know till I try, June's Rain replied. Won't Adrian berate you for the mess you're making? Gufei asked. Isn't he gone? June's Rain was perplexed. He is back. Gufei informed her, saying he's been home ever since that bunch of people fought earlier. Is that so? But I didn't see him. June's Rain was absolutely mollified when she learned of this, hurriedly climbing out of the pit she had literally dug herself into. Don't panic. Gufei coaxed, saying, you should stay inside this for now. He'll be gone pretty soon. Oh. June's Rain sighed in relief. Did he see me? I don't think so. Gufei felt as if he were cajoling a child. Go and see if he is gone, June's Rain requested, sending Gufei away. Right away. Gufei immediately stood up. When he turned around, he saw the other 5 men staring blankly at the lady. Plenty of methods could attract these men's attention. Ahem. Gufei cleared his throat loudly. The other 5 men returned to their senses and did their best to conceal their momentary loss of composure. "Let's not tarry," Gufei said. "Sword Demon and assist, see if there are any other exits from the mansion. Wounds, guard the entrance to the cellar, it's possible for it to be connected to the mansion. Royal, guard the side of the mansion, it should allow you to attack from 3 different directions. Miles, you and I will come in from the front. Any questions?" Young Master Han rattled off his orders in one breath. "Nope." With that, they all left to take up their assigned positions. Sword Demon and Brother Assist circled around the place and did not discover any other exits of sort, so they kept watch of the windows. Royal God Call selected a good position for sniping, while Warrior Without Wounds camped by the cellar entrance. June's Rain occasionally popped her head out from the pit like a gopher, but she never once spotted Warrior Without Wounds, who was merely 3 meters away from her. Gufei and young Master Han proceeded to knock on the mansion's door. Who knew what NPCs were doing inside their homes, or perhaps they would all be standing next to the doors all the while, waiting for any players to visit it. All they knew was that Mr. Adrian quickly opened the door once they knocked on it. Patiently conversing with NPC was something only a player who had read too many web novels or who was simple-minded like June's Rain would do. Young Master Han was a no-nonsense person, though. Taking out the ledger and note, he dangled them right in front of Mr. Adrian's face the first chance he got. "Your blackmailing of the werewolves has already been exposed. Die." His action and words were very plain. Taking out the necessary items that were required, he made his intention to advance the plot of the quest apparent. Compared to young Master Han, Gufei was a more straightforward person. Just as young Master Han finished his statement, Gufei pulled out his sword. By the time Mr. Adrian expressed his shock and horror at the revelation, Gufei's sword was already sailing straight for him. Although Gufei had confiscated the Fang of the Wolf King necklace from this NPC last time, the newly spawned Mr. Adrian was also someone who knew of the werewolf's identity, so who knew if this NPC was hiding a similar item. The average werewolves were at level 70, so a shape-shifting Wolf King would basically be a level 70 boss. Gufei was not about to let Mr. Adrian turn into one at all, which was why he decided to proactively strike Mr. Adrian first. Adrian was still the same opponent as he was before. It was just a pity for him that Gufei was already 10 levels higher and wearing top of the class equipment since the last time they had faced each other. Just Gufei casting Twin Incineration twice was enough to burn Adrian into a bald old man. Adrian was totally suppressed by Gufei, and the 2 men's fight wreaked havoc through the entire house. Young Master Han had actually pulled out his holy stave to assist Gufei at the first opportunity, but the scene unfolding before him had him stuffing it back inside his dimensional pocket. Instead, he then used his hand to navigate around the mansion as if he were blind. Stumbling on the wall where a meticulously drawn oil painting hung, he sighed with emotion. Parallel Worlds' design is really very detailed. Even this oil painting looks intricate. "Miles, come over here and take a look." Scram! Gufei chided as he viciously gave Adrian another slash. Young Master Han lost any sense of novelty after touring the place once. Moving a stool to a corner of the mansion, he opened a bottle of liquor and began enjoying his beverage of choice while occasionally praising Gufei's skill. Naturally, young Master Han did not forget to pester Gufei about hurrying up. Gufei's fighting spirits soared when he imagined Mr. Adrian to be young Master Han, endlessly hacking away at the poor NPC before him. As the NPC was about to lose the fight, Mr. Adrian did exactly what he had done back then. He groveled before Gufei and begged for his life. He piteously claimed that Gufei was unknowingly aiding the werewolves' objective to annihilate the human race and tempted the latter of obtaining all his fortune if he just let him go. Sadly, he was still facing the same opponent as before. Gufei was unmoved by his attempt at bargaining for his life and decisively slashed on. However, what happened next was just beyond Gufei's realm of expectations. Just as Gufei was thinking that Mr. Adrian would be finished with a few more slashes, with the latter's movement becoming more sluggish, as if he had given up all hope and was merely waiting for his death, the NPC seemed to have received blessing of strength from a fair goddess and acquired speed far beyond Gufei's imagination, managing to escape his attack range. Fuck! Young Master Han, who had been leisurely drinking and watching the fight, quickly stood up, smashing his bottle in the process. Contrary to expectation, Mr. Adrian did not head for the door but dove straight toward the window, instead. The window. Young Master Han fired off this message on the mercenary channel, hoping for the two others outside to be able to stop him in time. Thunderbolt, strike. Gu Fei quickly completed his chant in response to young Master Han's shout, using his last bit of mana for this one spell. A streak of lightning then conjured from the ceiling and came crashing onto Mr. Adrian's head. The spells unleashed using Moonlit Nightfalls were far stronger than the average cuts made by Gu Fei. Predictably, that single bolt of lightning was enough to kill Mr. Adrian outright. Who knew that Mr. Adrian would possess the tenacity of a cockroach, though, and would continue to dash toward the window despite directly taking Gu Fei's spell damage. In the end, his legs still gave way before he made it to the window, losing that explosive strength he had demonstrated when he first attempted to flee. Gu Fei darted right next to him, his wrist whirling as he delivered strike after strike onto Mr. Adrian. This was already the limit of what Gu Fei could do in the game right now. The spectator, young Master Han, beside Gu Fei could only see purplish blurs of his sword and could not see the individual strikes he was currently making. Mr. Adrian finally collapsed, just a step away from the window. He raised his arm high and stretched it toward the window, demonstrating his strong yearning for it. In the process of his fall, Mr. Adrian's palm landed on the window and pushed it open with the last vestiges of his strength. Gu Fei and young Master Han did not really mind this, only feeling that the animation for this NPC's death seemed quite tragic. In the next instant, they heard the sound of flapping wings as a gray shadow appeared out of nowhere and flew out the window before any of them could react. What was that? Gu Fei rushed over to the side of the window. Young Master Han was not any slower than him. The two leaned their heads out of the window and watched as a gray object flew off into the distance. Pigeon. Young Master Han once more quickly sent out a message on the mercenary channel. This is way too difficult. Royal God Call apologetically said. No matter how godly he was with a bow, there was just no way for him to take down a fast-moving target like that flying pigeon. Although he fired off an arrow with homing projectile, the inherent speed it possessed was nowhere near as fast as that of the bird. Did Mr. Adrian release that? Gu Fei asked while gazing at the corpse of Mr. Adrian. I think so, young Master Han replied. This explained that last burst of energy Mr. Adrian had shown. That strength he had in reserve was not for him to escape but to fulfill his duty of releasing that pigeon. Instead, that pigeon was evidently used to carry messages. Right now, none of them knew of that letter's content. As for how Mr. Adrian was able to store that bit of strength, there was no point in questioning the system's unreasonable logic that was at play here. Sword Demon and Brother Assist were now right outside the window as well, and they sighed in relief at the sight of Mr. Adrian's corpse. It's over. They then asked, what just flew off? It could be a homing pigeon for carrying messages. What do you guys think is Mr. Adrian's message about? There are two possibilities here, young Master Han answered. First is that it is a letter detrimental to the werewolves, but I don't think that is the case here. Although he's been exposed by us, it's not due to the werewolves failing to follow his orders. Taking petty revenge like that before his death is just too illogical. Therefore, it must be the second possibility, a continuation of the quest at hand. Given what Mr. Adrian was blackmailing the werewolves about, this is clearly an organization's attempt at silencing the prisoner being escorted by Traversing 4 Seas. This organization is clearly programmed to disrupt the Traversing 4 Seas escort mission. Taking all these things into consideration, Mr. Adrian most likely sent that message to inform the next interloper that he had failed his task and to make preparations for stopping us. Chapter 306, Mark of the Wolf. So what you are saying is that if we have managed to stop that pigeon from flying off, it would be smooth sailing for the rest of the quest for Traversing 4 Seas? Brother Assist asked. Not necessarily. The difference between a prepared opponent and one that is not should only affects the next ordeal's difficulty. Young Master Han replied. Everyone found his explanation to be plausible, and any discussion on this topic ceased as a result. This quest still belonged to Traversing 4 Seas through and through. As a bunch of mediocre mercenaries in terms of professionalism, none of young Master's elite really cared whether the difficulty of Traversing 4 Seas quest increased or not. So how are we going to resolve this matter now? Are we bringing Mr. Adrian's corpse over to meet the werewolves? Gufei lowered his head to look at the NPC corpse that lay sprawled on the floor as if Mr. Adrian were just sleeping. I doubt that's necessary. We'll just inform the werewolves, and the system will probably take care of the rest. But we can't conclude this quest at the moment, young Master Han said, explaining, if we talk to the werewolves now, they'll simply disperse, allowing traversing 4 seas to smoothly continue the journey tomorrow. Since this quest isn't showing on our quest log, we can't prove to traversing 4 seas that we are responsible for it. Guess we'll continue this tomorrow, then. Gufei said. Yup. You can go log off now. Young Master Han dismissed him. Gufei went to inform June's Rain of Mr. Adrian's departure so that she could continue digging out a passage. June's Rain happily resumed her work as Gufei returned to I-City and logged off. 4 hours later, Youthful Reflection and the other Traversing 4 Seas members were released from prison. Naturally, the first thing they concerned themselves with was the progress of the quest. When they learned that young Master's Elite had still intervened in the end, Youthful Reflection immediately contacted young Master Han. Miles went ahead and did it. He logged off just a while ago, so I have no idea what happened. Guess we'll find out tomorrow. Young Master Han replied. And that note? Youthful Reflection inquired. You want it back now? Of course. Young Master Han did not tell him that the issue had already been resolved, so Youthful Reflection did not give up on his end. He remained convinced that they could complete the quest by themselves. His line of thought about the situation completely matched young Master's Elite's, and he was adamant that Mr. Adrian was the manipulator, and the search for proof to expose him would come later. After taking back the note from young Master Han, Youthful Reflection quickly began interacting with Mr. Adrian. He repeatedly questioned the NPC about the letter as he searched through the mansion, keeping watch on the latter the whole time, but it turned out to be a fruitless endeavor. Youthful Reflection tried all sorts of methods that he could come up with, yet Mr. Adrian's reaction to this matter remained the same. He was absolutely clueless about it. Mr. Adrian was not faking it, either. This was because the current Mr. Adrian was already the 3rd iteration. The Mr. Adrian that had blackmailed the werewolves in relation to traversing 4 Seas Guild quest was no longer alive. While the NPC before Youthful Reflection bore the same task and name and would probably be the antagonist of a different quest, he was no longer relevant to traversing 4 Seas' current escort mission. It was only natural for the NPC to be clueless with regard to the matter. Unfortunately, Youthful Reflection was completely unaware of this. He busied himself over this matter from dusk to dawn. Youthful Reflection was completely worn out, yet Mr. Adrian was still spiritedly oblivious to anything pertaining to his quest. Youthful Reflection could no longer deny that he had failed. Perhaps, it was just as what everyone had said before, the quest was already assigned to Gufei, so only he could accomplish it. If only Youthful Reflection knew that the reason he had made no progress at all was that this stage of the quest that he was attempting to advance had already been completed. Youthful Reflection placing all his hopes onto Gufei was exactly what young Master Han was after. Everything else that followed from there was really simple. Young Master Han did not even have to negotiate with traversing 4 Seas further. As long as the matter was settled before the guild's eyes, traversing 4 Seas would naturally pay the expected remuneration. After all, Oathless Sword and the rest knew how they should act in such situations. For the whole day of the following day, the over 700 members of Traversing 4 Seas blankly waited for the Great Gufei to come online at 7 p.m. Without wasting any time or words, Gufei quickly took the road to the werewolves before the rest of the players set forth. Indeed, once Gufei informed them that he had taken care of Mr. Adrian, the werewolves readily packed their things up and happily made their way back to Yeguang village. Gufei waited eagerly for the hulking figure of the werewolf Wally, who walked over without shifting to his human form, to hand him some sort of reward. He patted Gufei's shoulder with his humongous paw as he howled. Sadly, Gufei could not understand wolf language. Wally shifted back to his human form and solemnly expressed his message to Gufei once more: "We will forever remember your kindness. Take care." Gufei waved to the werewolves. "Please accept our gift." Wally took something from his pocket. The eyes of Gufei, who was not usually passionate about in-game equipment, could not help but light up when he saw this. This was the same NPC who had given him his moonlit nightfalls last time. Although he did not put much value to equipment, It was undeniable that Gufei had only made such a torrential impact in Parallel World, all thanks to his moonlit nightfalls. Surely, anything the werewolves gifted would be top grade. As he was thinking of this, Wally presented him his quest reward. It was a belt. To be precise, it was an exceptionally gross-looking belt. A wolf's head was right where the buckle should be. Ignoring how fierce the wolf's head looked, the reason he found the belt very gross was that the half-agate wolf's maw was made to have a salivating look. The wolf head's fierce appearance was practically ruined by this. No matter how cold or fierce its gaze was, it felt off the longer anyone looked at it. Only one word crossed Gufei's mind: lecherous one. Is this belt a joke? Gufei muttered as he took it in his hand. Mark of the Wolf. Besides the usual defense and increase in inventory space that the average belts provided, Mark of the Wolf also had a special trait: Werewolf's Regeneration. Imbued with the unyielding vitality inherent to werewolves, the user recovered 1% of maximum HP every second. Gufei was speechless. This was another item related to HP, yet all this while, what he truly needed was something to supplement his mana. Although Gufei did not find the item ideal, it was still undoubtedly top grade. Just the belt being purple tier proved as much. Comparing the werewolf's regeneration trait with that of a knight's blessing of health was where the value of the item really shone. A knight's blessing of health could also regenerate a player's HP, yet it was only able to recover once every 5 seconds at a fixed numerical value that was not percentage based. On the current market, it was common to find equipment that increased maximum HP and mana, but traits that granted regeneration were rare. No potion that could recover players' HP or mana during combat existed in Parallel World as of date, so the preciousness of this belt was plain to see. If a guardian were to receive this belt instead, he or she would most likely celebrate the good fortune for 3 days and nights. Since Gufei was the one who had received it, all he did was look at the simple leather belt he currently had on and hesitate over replacing it. Mark of the Wolf was truly better than the leather belt he had on even in terms of basic stats, but the problem was the former's design. Gufei looked at the wolf head buckle once more. Gross. It's too gross. There's no way I'm letting it see the light of day. With this thought in mind, Gufei decisively stuffed Mark of the Wolf under his robe. The way he wore Mark of the Wolf would not affect its straight usage or function, except a mage's robe needed a belt to properly show off its beauty. With the belt worn on the inside, the robe hung limply on his body, making him look like aluminum can. Gufei was absolutely unaware how he looked, though. After bidding the werewolves farewell, he simply stood by the roadside and waited for the other players from Yunjuan City to come by. He had already sent out a message informing Traversing Four Seas just then that the crisis had been averted. Soon, the expedition arrived, with Oathless Sword, Youthful Reflection, and Gale Force taking the lead. Although they were rather dissatisfied, they were still grateful for Gufei's intervention in alleviating the quandary that they had found themselves in. The 3 men then carefully pondered on the mystery behind Gufei's appearance before continuing to lead everyone forward. The mercenary groups were mostly hanging out at the back of the expedition, and young Master's elite was often trailing far behind. As such, Gufei suffered all the players' looks and stares. From the general understanding of these players, there was only one explanation for the mage's current appearance: he was dressed too shabbily. This lasted until Sakurazaka Muni and his great hunting mercenary group came by. They were rather familiar with Gufei, so they could not help but be surprised at Gufei's unkempt appearance. Finally, Fireball came right up to Gufei and whispered, "Drunk bro, you got to buckle up properly after you're done with your business." "What are you talking about?" Gufei asked, nonplussed. Fireball's eyes looked far more obscene than the werewolf buckle. Hee. Playing in the fields, eh? That's the drunk bro I know. Did you lose your belt after doing the deed? I've got a spare on me, why don't you take it and buckle up? What nonsense are you spouting? Gufei heavily dropped his fist onto Fireball's head, finally realizing what the idiot was thinking. I have a belt on, it's inside. Gufei lifted his mage robe to show him the mark of the wolf within. Why did you fasten it on the inside? Fireball asked, perplexed. It's too ugly, Gufei replied. Not at all. It's really cool looking. I like it loads. Fireball patted that wolf's head on the buckle as he expressed his approval of it. Gufei was speechless. In terms of their nature, The wolf's head and Fireball were indeed very compatible with each other. But drunk bro, Fireball continued speaking, this isn't good. A mage robe looks really ugly if you fasten that belt on the inside. That can't be helped, though. It'd look really obscene to have this belt shown in broad daylight, Goofy reasoned. You currently look as if you're wearing an extra long nightgown. Isn't that obscene, as well? Fireball asked. Goofy shuddered at that thought. If you want to have the belt fasten on the inside, you'll have to wear your robe like this. Fireball unfastened his belt and fastened it on the inside. He then unbuttoned his robe and pulled it open to the side before placing a hand on his hips, half cocking his head, and slightly arching his back to strike a pose. With a myriad of styles, this is a mage's best weapon when it comes to courting chicks. Chapter 307, Beishi City. See what I did there? Fireball maintained his pose as he asked Goofy this. Goofy was totally speechless. This only works for this particular style of robe, though. Such coat-style mage robe with buttons isn't easy to find, you know? Fireball bragged. Checking Goofy's robe, he exclaimed, turns out Drunk Bro's mage robe has a similar style, too. That makes things simpler. Fireball unbuttoned the front of Goofy's mage robe for him before taking several steps backward to examine his handiwork. In the end, he shook his head with remorse. Drunk Bro, your mage robe is really outstanding, but your inner shirt is just too drab. I know a player who picked up the tailor crafting profession with decent proficiency. He's already able to create inner shirts and such. He's actually a tailor in reality, so he's truly a professional in that field. Look at what I'm wearing. Fireball approached Goofy once more and showed him his undershirt. See this? It's a casual tee. This isn't an article of clothes that players can learn to sew in-game without actually knowing how to do so in reality. Goofy was still at a loss for words. Unfortunately, my man is currently in Yunjuan City. But don't worry, I'll bring you to meet him when we get back. With my introduction, I'm sure you'll get 30% off of his products. Relax, Drunk Bro. I'll take care of this for you. Fireball returned to his mercenary group after he had said all this, leaving Goofy standing by the roadside like an idiot. This lasted until the 5 men of Young Master's Elite came by to pick him up. So how was it? What reward did the werewolves give you? They asked. Goofy took off Mark of the Wolf and showed it to them. He then adjusted his robe properly and fastened his original leather belt. Wow! A string of exclamations sounded as the men passed Mark of the Wolf among them. Young Master Han was the last one to take it in hand. Tossing it back to Goofy, he asked, is this quest for traversing 4 seas or for you? We haven't been on this expedition for long, yet you've already gotten so much fat loot. Goofy shrugged his shoulders as he stuffed the belt inside his dimensional pocket. You're not using it? War Without Wounds asked with a clear glint in his eyes. Given how casual Goofy treated the game, getting him to gift the items he did not need was easy. Easily figuring out War Without Wounds' intention, everyone eyed him with disdain. That expression on your face makes you look like a real cheapskate. Goofy commented, the belt is actually pretty good. It's just that the design is ugly. No way. It's really cool looking. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds disagreed. These two were the obscene sort. After all, War Without Wounds mentally slapped his mouth when he said that. It's rare for Miles to dislike something, so why am I trying to convince him otherwise? The design isn't the issue here. Brother Assist said to Goofy, players who are skilled in the tailor crafting profession should be able to alter its look according to your liking. Of course, those who are unskilled will only make it look worse. So it is better to find someone who knows how to design clothes even in reality. I know a person in Yunjuan City who is a proficient tailor, and he happens to be a skilled tailor in reality. Look at what I'm currently wearing. It's something he has specially tailored for me. I'll introduce you to this guy once we return to Yunjuan City. I'm sure he'll give you a 30% discount on my account. Don't worry, leave this matter to me. Goofy did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. Looking Brother Assist squarely in the face, he asked, do you know Fireball? Following this, Goofy lashed out his sword to cleave the newly formed Fireball. This was one disadvantage of being a mage. As long as what a mage spoke contained the words for an incantation, the spell would instantly be cast. Anytime any two mages conversed about the spells they knew, the scene would always blaze in flames, with countless balls of fire surrounding their frames. fire wheels rotating above their heads, or raging infernos growing in intensity from beneath their feet. Fireball, repeating fireball, and such would appear before them, looking glorious and dangerous. Brother Assist did not know that a player had the IGN fireball, so he failed to comprehend Gufei's meaning. Looking at Gufei's departing back, Brother Assist felt fear grip his heart as he asked the other four men, "Was he threatening me?" War Without Wounds solemnly patted his arm, "You better be careful." Brother Assist's legs wobbled. The throng of players continued on their journey. An expansive road and vast plains ahead reassured them of their safety from ambushers. However, this sort of uninterrupted journey was the most boring. Dully moving forward for 3 hours, they finally saw the outline of another city in the horizon. Oathless Sword took at the map that the system had specifically issued for this guild quest and checked their current coordinates. Ahead is Beishi City. Everyone sighed in relief. After leaving Y City's werewolves behind, they did not come across any other dangerous situation. As such, the werewolves remained everyone's #1 conversation topic along the way. Only a few of these players had actually seen the werewolves, as mostly young Masters Elite had had dealings with them. Therefore, these players barely experienced anything during their travel from Y City to Beishi City. The players from Yunjuan City could already spot several players hailing from Beishi City. In comparison, their army numbering over 1,000 easily caught the locals' eyes, and plenty of the locals stopped what they were doing to watch their expedition advance onward. Take care and maintain a low profile here. Those who had suffered losses in Y City reminded their companions and even themselves of this. Combat was essentially the main allure in MMOs, so it was very easy to nurture a reckless and wild mentality like what was prevalent in Y City. These players were worried that players from Beishi City would have the same character here. In contrast, Oathless Sword and the rest of Traversing 4 Seas were far more relaxed here. They had made ample preparations before coming here and had checked the forums of Beishi City. Beishi City was a typical peaceful city and was nothing like the chaotic Y City. Everyone began to ease up when the expedition managed to make its way into the city without trouble. The mercenaries headed straight to the spawn points to register their characters, while all the Traversing 4 Seas members accompanied Oathless Sword in delivering the prisoner to Beishi City's prison for safekeeping. Most of them proceeded to log off after. Although they had no direct confrontations with Y City's players, 3 Traversing 4 Seas members still regrettably lost their lives while grinding and questing, largely due to their unfamiliarity with the local quest's difficulty and monsters' respawn rate. While their return to Yunjuan City was not particularly troublesome, the system still tagged their guild quest as failed and subsequently removed it from their quest log. The players of Traversing 4 Seas only had 1 life for this guild quest. That was why when they arrived at Beishi City, no one dared to take any chances and immediately logged off at the safe zones. The 6 men of Young Masters Elite were sneakier here. As they neared Beishi City, they began searching through the marching troops for a particular player, Silver Moon. According to Dusky Cloud's plan, his group would only move to repeatedly kill Silver Moon once he registered his character's spawn point to Beishi City. While Dusky Cloud did not ask for their help on the matter, the 6 men did not really mind joining in on the fun. There was no love lost between Silver Moon and them. After all, Silver Moon was naturally surrounded by his men from Silver Moon Mercenary Group. Gufei and company followed behind them from quite the distance, even as they searched for traces of Dusky Cloud and his men. Since Yunjuan City's players had spent another night in Y City, Dusky Cloud had managed to bring a bunch of hitmen with him to Beishi City ahead. Neighboring cities often had quests that required players to go back and forth between them, just like the quest that had brought June's Reign to Y City. Although most people were too lazy to bother with this sort of quests, there was no lack of Y City players who would take up such quests. These players who had obtained quests requiring them to go to Beishi City naturally knew of the way there. Gufei and company watched Silver Moon and his group walk past an intersection. The 6 men continued to trail after them while laughing inside. Dusky Cloud and his men seemed to already be in position and had probably assigned men to ambush Silver Moon at the spawn point for nights as well. They were probably not making a move on Silver Moon because they were waiting for him to register his character in Beishi City. This was the first time that Silver Moon and his men's party of over 30 came to Beishi City. As they made their way to the city, they found out that the nearest spawn point was the Thieves' Union. Players only needed to speak with the NPC in charge of registration by a safe zone and they would successfully transfer their spawn location over. Of course, there was a fee for this service as well. The NPCs in Parallel World were like a host of machines that ate coins, much to the loathing of the players. Silvermoon did not rush to log off after registering his character over. Leaving the spawn point, Silvermoon was not particularly surprised to see Gufei and the rest of Young Master's elite enter the Thieves' Union after him. Most players from Yunjuan City that had inquired about the spawn points headed to the Thieves' Union as well, with hundreds of people streaming into the place at their pace. The eyes of both parties met momentarily. Despite knowing that the other party had already seen through his duplicitous act, Silvermoon still persisted with his hypocritical ways and squeezed a smile to them. Young Master Han smiled back at him as Gufei and Sword Demon maintained a poker face. Brother Assist looked somewhat worried. Meanwhile, War Without Wounds and Royal God Call sniggered as they brushed past Silvermoon. The two darted over to the NPC and registered their characters before hurrying back to watch the fun. They are about to leave. The two of them were extremely elated. Dusky Cloud must have already set up his formation over by this spawn point's entrance, unleashing a concerted attack that would utterly devastate Silvermoon the moment he stepped out. Everyone was just uncertain how many men Dusky Cloud had actually brought for this. Would there be all 4,000 of them in Beishi City? How spectacular would it look if all 4,000 players simultaneously unleashed attacks? Who knew when any players from Yunjuan City would witness such a grand show of force like this? As these two men anxiously waited for this, Silvermoon and his men finally took their final step out of the spawn point. Royal God Call excitedly clenched his fists. It's coming. In the end, the entrance to the Thieves' Union remained devoid of any sweeping changes to transform it into a fighting field. Besides players making their way in and out of this safe zone, nothing else happened. What's happening? Did Old Cloud and company not make it? The two men were perplexed. Gufei and the others, who had just finished registering their characters, were equally at a loss. Chapter 308, Dusky Cloud. The combat veteran Silvermoon and his men freely walked about in Beishi City, pointing and looking around as though they were tourists on a vacation. Gufei was supposed to log off earlier, but his desire to witness Silvermoon being stripped off his equipment had him staying online just a little longer. Even now, he was still sneakily following Silvermoon, but that ambush he had been waiting for never came to be. The men of Young Master's elite could no longer stand it and were about to contact Dusky Cloud when they spotted the man's head poking out from a certain street corner. Dusky Cloud checked Silvermoon's heading direction, turned his head toward the six men, and waved his hand in greeting. No longer needing to send out a message, the six men quickly went to him. Why haven't you made a move yet? They were a lot more impatient than Dusky Cloud, it seemed. It's too troublesome, Dusky Cloud explained. What do you mean? Look, Dusky Cloud pointed at the road leading toward the Thieves' Union. They are all players from Yunjuan City. Indeed, just as what he had said, the mercenaries from Yunjuan City that had recently arrived to Beishi City slowly meandered down the street before heading over to the Thieves' Union to register their characters. Basically, the whole lane was filled with Yunjuan City's players. It won't be good to strike now, Dusky Cloud concluded. How many men have you brought with you? Royal God Call asked. Dusky Cloud glanced backward. Not a lot. Just about 300. Ah. Royal God Call felt disappointed. Why so few? Doesn't the 10 Guild Alliance have over 4,000 members? We're just trying to take care of Silvermoon. Is there even a need for more? Dusky Cloud asked back. Actually, Dusky Cloud was tempted to bring all 4,000 of his men to surround Silvermoon, just so he could see the frightened look on his face, but it had really been a while since the Guild War, and not many of their members held deep grudge against Silvermoon. In fact, most of the 10 Guild Alliance did not have an existing enmity with him, so they were quite unwilling to dedicate in-game time going over to another city in pursuit of Silvermoon. Because of this, Dusky Cloud did not force them all to partake in this mission and just contented himself with those who volunteered for it. You see, if you brought all 4,000 here, you wouldn't even need to worry about this whole street of Yunjuan City players, Royal God Call commented. Bro, you're rather vicious. Why don't you come over to I-City to expand? Dusky Cloud exclaimed. You're the only one who's vicious here. Gufei countered, what he meant is that no one would dare lend Silver Moon a hand if they were to see 4,000 men lying in wait for him. Were you actually thinking of eliminating everyone all at once? Dusky Cloud had indeed misunderstood Royal God Call's comment, and what Gufei had said was precisely why City's de facto overlord had in his extremist mind. Actually, although everyone is from the same city, that doesn't guarantee that we will assist a fellow Yunjuan City player if a fight breaks out, Brother Assist said. That's true. While we were all hired for this mission, we don't really know one another before this. Plenty of conflicts occur between mercenaries in our line of work, so I don't think anyone would be willing to assist him. War without wounds concurred. Why don't you try feigning an attack to see how these people would react before coming up with a plan accordingly? Brother Assist suggested. The 6 men surrounded Dusky Cloud and gave him suggestions, all for the sake of seeing Silver Moon's demise a little faster. They absolutely did not intend to spend the entire night following Dusky Cloud around as he looked for an opportunity to strike. In that case, Dusky Cloud finally succumbed to the 6 men's instigations and was just about to probe the surrounding players' stance on the matter with an attack when a large group of men by the intersection behind them emerged. Silver Moon warmly greeted this approaching group of men and, soon after, he and his men joined them. Now, not even the full force that Dusky Cloud had brought with him would be able to match up with the hundreds of men currently walking with Silver Moon. Oathless Sword? The 6 men of Young Master's elite exchanged puzzled looks. When did they begin working together? They look real chummy with one another now, Brother Assist said. I can't find information of this on the guild channel, the Spire Royal God Call reported. It's not really surprising, Young Master Han remarked, explaining, Silver Moon's party ride skill plays a crucial role in large-scale fights. It would be even more surprising if Oathless Sword didn't try to pull him over to his side. Considering Silver Moon's hypocritical ways, and his ability to falsely make agreements without a hint of sincerity even with his enemies, he'd surely not pass up this chance to build a strong relationship with such a powerful entity like Traversing 4 Seas. The way I see it, there's a huge possibility of him becoming the 4th core member of Traversing 4 Seas by the time we return to Yunjuan City. Can he still make it back to Yunjuan City, though? The men looked at Dusky Cloud when they asked this. Dusky Cloud wavered. We'll have to find the right opportunity. We're at a really disadvantageous position as things stand right now. Since Silver Moon is with the employer for this mission, wouldn't everyone here lend a hand if we were to initiate an attack now? The 6 men did not answer him, as what he had just said was apparent. If Dusky Cloud were to act now, Oathless Sword would surely intervene. Since it would involve traversing 4 seas, the various mercenary groups in the area would surely move to help. With only 300 men on Dusky Cloud's side in this unfamiliar territory, was there even a possibility of success for them if they clashed against Yunjuan City's players? Just because Y City's players were passionate about PvPing did not mean that they were brain dead. The combat veteran Dusky Cloud's assessment of the opposing party's strength was in fact more accurate than Young Master's elites. Although he was unrestrained and pompous at times, Dusky Cloud would still not dare to strike like this, knowing how slim their chance of success was in this scenario. He was not stupid enough to fight a losing battle, after all. Thus, under their unwilling gazes, Silver Moon leisurely walked further away with Traversing 4 Seas in tow. Are we letting him go just like that? The men of Young Master's elite felt rather dissatisfied. I'll send some brothers he's unfamiliar with to follow him, Dusky Cloud assured them, explaining, I'll stop tailing him here. If Silver Moon turns around, he may discover me. In that case, we'll go do our things. Contact us if you make any progress. The 6 men said. Of course. Go ahead and do your businesses. I'll make sure to call you guys if anything exciting happens. Dusky Cloud chuckled. Young Master's elite did not promise to assist Dusky Cloud with the matter, nor did Dusky Cloud directly request Young Master's elite's help. After all, Young Master's elite's hands currently were tied with them being with the Yunjuan City's players in Beishi City. This was not a convenient time for them to settle old scores, as all of them were temporary comrades for this particular mission. It was already unprofessional of them to stay on the sidelines when they saw a comrade being hunted down. They would likely rub many people the wrong way if they were to assist the offending party in taking Silver Moon down. As such, Dusky Cloud merely told them that he would let them know if anything exciting happened. Young Masters Elite of course understood what he meant and nodded their heads in acquiescence. Dusky Cloud went to set up his matter, while the 6 men went about their ways. The 5 men proceeded to tease Goofy. Once you go offline, you won't be able to see it if things unfold tonight. Goofy did not spend much time online, yet he was exceptionally skilled. His equipment was top-notch, and his level was not too far off from them. Such an anomaly in a game left these experts feeling rather disgruntled. They were looking forward to the day when Goofy would stay overnight, for that was the must-have quality of Apex gamers. However, Goofy merely shrugged his shoulders. It's fine if I can't watch it happen. I'll just slay him myself when I have time. With that, he made his way toward the Thieves' Union to log out. In the end, Silver Moon spent the whole night grinding levels with traversing 4 seas in one of Beishi City's grinding maps. The men Dusky Cloud had sent to keep an eye on Silver Moon ended up falling asleep while lying on the grass. It was already morning in reality and in-game when these men woke up. The group of players was still grinding before them, but it was obviously time for them to leave, as they were already showing signs of lethargy and extreme fatigue from staying online all night long. After taking care of the last wave of monsters, this group moved to return to the city. There's an opportunity. The reconnaissance team that had slept through the night while doing the stakeout was still energetic when it informed Dusky Cloud of this. What's up? Dusky Cloud's reply came fast, as this was an opportunity he had waited a whole night for. Seems like they are going to log off, the reconnaissance team reported. This was indeed an opportunity. After an entire night of monster grinding, players would usually proceed to auction off their equipment to collate their earnings, store their coins in the bank, tidy up their items in the warehouse, repair their equipment, or even head over to a tavern to drink a glass or two. Players would have difficulties gathering up again for any group activity during this time, which made it a prime opportunity for any enemies to strike. Continue to observe and report the coordinates. Dusky Cloud perked up when he heard their report and started gathering the comrades with him. Naturally, he was also feeling very tired after staying up all night. The target has returned to the city. He's together with his team, probably entering from the west gate. The reconnaissance team continued to report Silver Moon's movement. What's the nearest log-off point from the west gate? Dusky Cloud hurriedly asked. His brothers in arms that had done the research of Beishi City's layout replied, the Archer Range. Prepare an ambush by that log-off point and get ready to start a fight. Rendezvous over at the Knights Barracks, but leave some fresh faces along the streets from the west gate to the log-off point for archers. Send some men over to the nearest taverns, warehouses, smithies, tailoring shops, grocery stores, fruit stands, bakeries, master appraiser, and clinics. Don't forget the bank, auction house, and trade exchange platforms, too. Dusky Cloud skillfully passed down these orders to his men. Boss, is there really a need for all that? I'm already following him right now. Someone from the reconnaissance team reasoned. It's easy for you to watch him since our target is moving with a large group. Once they enter the city and these hundreds of men disperse, can you still keep track of Silver Moon? Everyone is tired after staying online overnight. All it takes is a momentary slip-up, and all our efforts will go down the drain. Dusky Cloud replied. You've got a point, boss. The reconnaissance team member was naturally ashamed to mention that he had been sleeping on the hill all this while, so he was pretty much invigorated right now. Time passed as Dusky Cloud and his men were yawning while they prepared their ambush. Everyone, our target has entered the city, the reconnaissance team reported. I'm keeping my eyes trained on the west gate. I'll surely spot Silver Moon when he passes by. Although he had deployed his men all over the city as a precaution, Dusky Cloud was still the most confident of his ability to spot Silver Moon. After all, Dusky Cloud had rich experience when it came to PvP. Chapter 309, Murderous Intent emanating in the central plaza. Just as Dusky Cloud and his men had expected, the large throng of players immediately went their separate ways upon entering Beishi City's west gate. Dusky Cloud felt anxious when he saw a majority of the players heading directly to the nearest log-off point, as he and his men would not have any chance to strike if Silver Moon decided to meld in with the going offline crowd. Good news quickly arrived with the high-spirited reconnaissance team members' report. I've spotted Silver Moon. Where is he headed to? Dusky Cloud hurriedly asked. Seems to be in the warehouse, the member replied. Watch him closely, then wait till more of these people disperse. Are the preparations over by the Archer range complete? Dusky Cloud asked. Ready and waiting. Silvermoon has indeed left for the warehouse. But he's still in the company of many players, with some of them appearing to be Beishi City players. It may not be convenient to strike now, the member appropriately updated him about the situation. Just keep track of him for now. The rest of you, start populating the road from the warehouse by the west gate going to the Archer range, Dusky Cloud commanded. Got it. How many companions does Silvermoon have with him? Dusky Cloud asked. There are about 40 to 50 players heading to the warehouse with him, was the reply he got. That's a sizable amount. Dusky Cloud pondered on aloud. If they continue to stick together, I'm afraid we'll be forced to wait for most of Traversing 4C's players to log off before we can make a move. Naturally, Dusky Cloud was not doing this because he wanted to give Traversing 4C's face but because it would eat up time for them to deal with a handful of enemies. Although there were merely 40 to 50 men on their end, they could not discount Silvermoon's party-wide skill. If they attacked while most of Traversing 4C's players were still online, those men could easily turn back and assist Silvermoon in the fight, essentially wasting Dusky Cloud and his men's effort of waiting for the whole night. Furthermore, their failure here would make their target be on guard for future attempts. It would not be easy to find another chance for this, given how shrewd Silvermoon was. We must take him down in one attack. This is something we cannot afford to fuck up. Dusky Cloud clenched his fists. Those standing by the Archer range, inform us after the players from Yunjuan City log off. Roger that. Where has the leader of Traversing 4C's gone to? Dusky Cloud asked the reconnaissance team. We have no idea. They replied. Everyone, besides those stalking our target, head over to the Archer range. We will concentrate our firepower there for this one concerted strike, Dusky Cloud commanded. Silvermoon has left the warehouse. The reconnaissance team hurriedly reported. Is there any other players with him? Have the players from Yunjuan City logged off yet? Dusky Cloud quickly asked. Some have left. Silvermoon and a dozen or so players are heading toward a different direction together. I'm tailing them now. They're not heading toward the Archer range? Nope. Send us the coordinates. Everyone, approach and act alone, Dusky Cloud hurriedly instructed. Can you tell me where that bastard is heading to? I'm not too sure. The reconnaissance team member could not answer this. This place was not Y City, and he was still unfamiliar with its layout, so he could not easily determine their target's destination. Don't panic. Dusky Cloud told his comrades even as he tried to calm himself down. This should be Silvermoon's first time visiting this city. Dusky Cloud began to break down his thought process aloud. We specially memorized Beishi City's layout because we wished to take him down here, but since he'll be staying here for one night, he doesn't have a reason to spend too much effort learning his way around this city. He'll likely depend on the pedestrians to navigate around here. When one of you sees him speak to someone, just ask that same person about his inquiry and we'll surely find out his destination. Boss can really divine the unknown. That guy is really talking to a passerby right now, the man happily exclaimed. Not bad, old Cloud. Celestial Pig was beside Dusky Cloud as he heavily patted his back. You're pretty quick-witted. Motherfucker, you may be a pig, but I sure am not. Dusky Cloud mocked Celestial Pig as he started heading towards Silvermoon's current coordinates with several of his brothers in arms, silently waiting for more news. I've got it, boss. The reconnaissance member announced in elation. Silvermoon and company are going to the auction house. Everyone, quickly gather to the auction house. Dusky Cloud ordered as he gleefully bragged to Celestial Pig. I knew that bastard won't know his way around here. But, isn't the auction house supposed to be located at the central plaza just like in every endgame city? Could this be a trap? Celestial Pig wondered. Fuck, do you think you have the god's eye view or something? Could you find your way to the heart of a city if I were to throw you in a random corner of it? Motherfucker, you've grown cowardly after being killed by Silvermoon so much that you now think everything he does is a trap. I spit on you. Dusky Cloud harshly berated him. Celestial Pig did not dare to comment on this. Out of Dusky Cloud's comrades, Celestial Pig was known for his fear of Silvermoon. Back then, He had been unable to outwit or outplay Silver Moon, having been bullied during Parallel Worlds Open Beta left and not in his heart. Urged by Dusky Cloud to hurry, besides the players lying in wait by the Knights' barracks, the rest of the men headed straight for Beishi City's central plaza to gather at the auction house there. Silver Moon and his band of brothers walked onward at a leisure pace, while Dusky Cloud's troops followed behind stealthily. Some players with faster movement speed rushed ahead of Silver Moon. Even the warriors and priest job classes were not particularly slower than Silver Moon. Old Cloud, it might be hasty for us to act promptly, and he might escape us if our preparations are not completed in time. Why don't we let him do his shopping first so we can use that time to set up outside? Someone suggested. That's not a bad idea. Quite a lot of Yunjuan City's players have gone offline, right? Dusky Cloud asked. The players, who went to this spawn point for archers, are already back in reality, the players by the archer range reported. Have you seen their guild leader, that warrior? As his comrades did not know Oathless Sword, Dusky Cloud was wondering how to describe him when he heard someone over there reply, "Yeah, I saw him." He's gone. You recognize him? Dusky Cloud found this perplexing. He. There's a long-winded warrior who addressed everyone after arriving at the archer range. Anyone can instantly tell that he's a guild leader. The man explained. Oh. Dusky Cloud mumbled. He was a guild leader himself, yet he had never addressed his men before logging off like Oathless Sword. Shortly after, Dusky Cloud and his men arrived by the auction house. They even arrived at it earlier than their target. Dusky Cloud was pleased to see some of his men pretending to nonchalantly wander about the plaza, feeling that they had done a wonderful job blending in. Naturally, those people that Silver Moon might recognize, such as Dusky Cloud, Celestial Pig, and a few others, hid themselves from plain sight along the street. Dusky Cloud no longer needed to position up his men when he saw this. They had men crawling on every street leading to the auction house, so once Silver Moon was done with his business in the auction house, he would instantly be surrounded. Nothing short of divine intervention could grant him escape now. When is Silver Moon reaching this location? I think now is the time. Before Dusky Cloud could key in these words, he caught sight of a silvery glint before him as a knight clad in shiny, full-body armor swaggered right past his eyes. Silver Moon and his mercenary members were heading toward the auction house. Fuck! Look at how flagrant and audacious you are, I'll have you crying in a moment. Dusky Cloud cursed inside as he informed his men, Silver Moon has already arrived. Those who aren't here yet better put your motherfucking backs into it. This seemingly simple command was actually very difficult for Dusky Cloud to relay over. This was because the players with him all hailed from 10 different guilds. Although they were all in the same alliance, the system did not provide them a channel of sort to communicate with one another. This meant that Dusky Cloud would have to relay his order to these men from the other 9 guilds around him first before it could be disseminated to the respective members, and any response that they might get in return would have to be sent over to these 9 as well. This was indeed a complicated setup, but since they had been working in such a format for so long, everyone was already used to it. At the moment, this air of trepidation was not just being experienced by these 300-odd men in Beishi City, the 10 Guild Alliance's players back in Y City were also in a similar state, and they made a conscious effort to maintaining a clean channel, knowing that their comrades were at the critical stage of their hunt in Beishi City, and quietly waited for further news. Silver Moon, who was now in a group of only 12 men, made his way across the plaza and into the auction house. The men from the 10 Guild Alliance made eye contact with one another without revealing themselves in the slightest. Some players had yet to reach the area, and Dusky Cloud saw it fit to hurry them along while he arranged those present to collapse onto Silver Moon when he exited the auction house. He then assigned a few thieves in stealth mode outside the auction house to block Silver Moon as soon as he stepped out. The auction house was a safe zone in itself, which meant that PvPing was impossible inside, so they could not let Silver Moon to seek sanctuary inside it once they launched their attacks. Had Gufei been in the central plaza at this moment, he would have surely been able to sense the palpable killing intent pervading the air. Dusky Cloud felt a twinge of regret inside him that young Master's Elites was currently not present to witness the spectacular sight of them ganking Silver Moon. Everyone, Silver Moon is about to come out. The man who followed Silver Moon's group inside the auction house reported this. Just as this message arrived, the auction house's door swung open and Silver Moon and company walked out in high spirits, his expression clearly showing that he had made quite the haul. "Hey, let me show you what a real haul is." Dusky Cloud was amusedly thinking of this when, in the next moment, the materialization and subsequent descent of descending wheel of flames right above Silver Moon's head gave him a thorough shock. "Motherfucker!" Whose hand slipped? Dusky Cloud was infuriated. The plan was to wait until Silver Moon was a good distance away from the auction house before the members milling about in the central plaza would come forward and surround him. The players on the streets would follow and create an even larger encirclement, forming an inner and outer circle to completely cut off Silver Moon's path of escape. The flame wheel indeed hit Silver Moon, but it also hit the nearby thieves in stealth. Taking that spell head on and discovering the several thieves around, Silver Moon quickly realized what was going on. Turning on his heel, he ran toward the auction house. The thieves strove to catch up to Silver Moon and stop him from entering the safe zone. Silver Moon and his men were all outside by now, but the auction house's door remained wide open and, from it, a bunch of warriors rushed out with murder in their minds. Since the thieves did not recognize any of them, they hastily raised their arms to resist their charge. Unfortunately, these thieves had already received damage from that flame wheel before, so they were unable to endure the rushing warriors' assault. Dusky Cloud did not bother to find the culprit for that misfire and instead led his men to join the fray while they still had the chance. This was when the doors of the bank, trade exchange, and nearby establishments burst open with hordes of players streaming out of them. What's going on? Dusky Cloud was at a complete loss right now. "Fuck, that's Bluey's!" Celestial Pig bellowed. Dusky Cloud turned to follow his voice, spotting a mage in liquid, blue robe. It was indeed the erstwhile vice guild leader of the disbanded Past Deeds Guild, Bluey's. Fucking hell. Was this really a trap? Dusky Cloud looked around and saw numerous players rushing out of the buildings around them. The bank, trade exchange, etc. were edifices capable of holding hundreds or even thousands of players. It was now clear where that flame wheel from before had come. By the looks of things, the mage who had cast that spell was not from his men. Given his men's rich experience PvPing, Dusky Cloud was already considering that, as it was really unlikely for them to make such a rookie mistake. "Let's retreat," Celestial Pig suggested in his agitation. Once he heard Silver Moon entrapping them, Celestial Pig broke out in a bout of cold sweat. "Fuck retreating, you coward. That's no way someone who hangs out with proper motherfuckers like us should act. Out of all the 4,487 members of the 10 Guild Alliance, you're the most cowardly at times like this." Dusky Cloud gave Celestial Pig an earful before pulling out his dagger and hurtling it toward Bluey's. This was the core characteristic of Y-City's players. They would discuss plan, set up ambushes, and even ensnare their enemies before a fight. But once the fighting began, they would just recklessly charge head-on to the enemies with this mantra in mind: show no mercy and kill them all. When they held the upper hand, they showed no mercy. If they were at a disadvantage, they would grit their teeth and kill as many as they could without mercy as well. Never retreating, and never backing down. Dusky Cloud had always believed this to be the very essence of a man. Fuck it. Let's go all out. Dusky Cloud's admonishments seemed to have awakened Celestial Pig's inner fire. Wielding his battle axe, he followed Dusky Cloud into the fray. Chapter 310, The Enemy of My Enemy. The men that Dusky Cloud had brought with him for this operation were extremely baffled by the emergence of enemies from the nearby buildings. Similarly, those players were shocked by their sudden appearance in the central plaza and from the adjoining streets. The gazes of the people on both sides went straight to their respective bosses. This was when Dusky Cloud's men followed the trajectory he was diving toward to and identified the recipient of his devoted attention. Fuck, it's Bluey's. On the opposing party's end, Bluey's also recognized the thief in Fleetfoot mode that was hurtling toward him and roared, "Damn, it's Dusky Cloud." However, the person who was the loudest in this location right now was Silver Moon. Raising the glowing golden sword in the air, Silver Moon activated the party-wide skill of King's Command as he yelled, "Brothers, to arms!" Both parties quickly entered melee engagement. The fact that Dusky Cloud and his men had fallen for Silver Moon's scheme again infuriated them so much. As such, their battle cry was more thunderous, promising pain on their foes as they strove to foil their ploy even if it meant their own ruin. Blueys was on the warpath when he heard Silvermoon's roar. Eyes turning red, Blueys wielded his weapon and launched a vigorous counterattack on Dusky Cloud. Numerous white lights burst forth from the central plaza in this first clash. Dusky Cloud's men had rich experience in group fights. Naturally, Blueys was not too far off from them, being a former resident of the blood-soaked city of Y. All these players hailing from Y City were truly well-versed in concentrating their firepower to kill as many enemies as they could. The number of casualties was a reflection of either side's manpower, level of teamwork, choice of target, and so on. Simply put, this was a battle of efficiency. While the logic behind all this sounded simple, utilizing such a stratagem required a deep understanding of warfare. This sort of head-on clashes were taxing on the priests, to say the least, as it needed them to possess superb healing skills and a strong grasp of tactics that could bring victory to their side. Therefore, those priests with average skills would soon be revealed when they discover their comrades dying on them, unable to provide any significant assistance in the least. Highly skilled priests were truly few and far between, so it was hardly surprising that almost all the priests on both sides were hard-pressed to accomplish their tasks. Since the priests were barely up to par, the death toll on both sides quickly rose in just these 2 rounds of fighting. Being a mage, Blueys predictably did not rush to the forefront of this clash. Although Dusky Cloud was striving to pounce on him, Blueys was not foolish enough to be swayed by his action into duking it out with the commander of the opposing side. Dusky Cloud did not forget his real objective for this assault, yelling to his men as he fought on, "Keep your eyes peeled for Silvermoon. Immediately strike if the opportunity presents itself." Dusky Cloud did not instruct his men to launch the first strike onto their target because he had seen Silvermoon unleash the king's command skill. In such fights where efficiency was the key, it was imperative to avoid initiating the attack on the enemies. Although they were here to kill Silvermoon, Dusky Cloud knew that attempting to attack the latter at this moment might very well cost him the lives of all his men and to fail the operation. Instead, Blueys was evidently stunned when he heard Dusky Cloud's order and he hurriedly squeezed himself out from the mage's ranks, yelling, "Stop motherfucking fighting! We're here to kill Silvermoon, too." "What?" Dusky Cloud was stunned by Blueys' words, but since Silvermoon was known for his scheming nature, he was unsure of the veracity of Blueys' claim. Fortunately, Blueys was decisive enough and immediately issued this command to his men, "Everyone, stop your attacks." Since Blueys decisively withdrew from the fight and had his men stand down, Dusky Cloud no longer held suspicion regarding his claim and quickly ordered his men to follow suit. Almost instantly, only the sounds of sporadic fights could be heard from the fighting field, and those soon stopped as well. Before either side could make sense of things further, Dusky Cloud slapped his forehead in realization, "Motherfucker! Where is Silvermoon?" This one statement prompted everyone to search for their target, yet not one of them spotted even a lick of shadow of Silvermoon and his men. "Goddamn! Did none of you see him?" Dusky Cloud and Blueys coincidentally bellowed the same thing at the same time. Everyone looked at one another, nonplussed. "Motherfucking find him!" The 2 men shouted in unison again. Yelling the same thing twice had left an awkward aftertaste in the 2 men, causing them to eye each other rather discontentedly. "We've lost them, no idea where they are right now." The players who had run down the nearby streets in search of Silvermoon reported back. "Fuck, that guy gave us the slip." Blueys exhaled. Dusky Cloud was no fool and he quickly realized why everything had gone south. Dusky Cloud and his men had assumed that Blueys and company were on Silvermoon's side, but Blueys would not have thought that Dusky Cloud and his men were lending Silvermoon a hand. However, this misunderstanding started after Silvermoon's bellow of "Brother, to arms!" That one shout had been extremely detrimental to either party. Dusky Cloud's side completely assumed that Silvermoon was calling for Blueys and his men. Blueys' side, meanwhile, did not actually think much of that shout, but when they saw Dusky Cloud and his men aggressively charging at them, they promptly assumed that Silvermoon and Dusky Cloud's team had joined forces against him, leaving Blueys and his men with no choice but to ruthlessly counterattack. Furthermore, the shrewd Silvermoon was familiar with how either party fought. He knew that both sides would employ blitzkrieg tactic to quickly wrap up the fight, which would naturally avoid directly engaging his teammates who were under the effect of King's command. Since both parties were enemies with Silver Moon, they had consciously given him a wide berth. Given how their battle tactics had been precisely targeting enemies which required their utmost concentration and how no one expected Silver Moon to flee, by the time both sides wised up to the fact that they had been had, Silver Moon had already made his successful getaway. "You assholes, what the actual fuck?" Dusky Cloud was glaring at Bluey's. "You guys could have targeted Silver Moon any damn time. Why would you choose to do so when we're making our move as well? Motherfuckers, why did you guys come here in Beishi City, anyway? We've been keeping our eyes on that guy for the whole night. If we're not gonna act now, when would we find another chance to do so?" Bluey's countered. He was once the second in command of the eradicated Past Deeds Guild. His enmity with Dusky Cloud and his men was at the same level as his hatred for Silver Moon and Vast Lushness. So what pleasantries could they say to one another? Both parties believed that it was the sudden appearance of the other team that had spoiled their plan. All the players in the central plaza had their weapons out, looking as though they would fight once more. "Boss, we should hurry and chase after Silver Moon." Some players were still level-headed. "Chase, my ass. How's anyone gonna chase after the missing Silver Moon?" The two had once more said the same thing, causing them to glare at each other. "Stop copying my words." Dusky Cloud was the first to say this. Bluey's originally wanted to say the same thing, but since Dusky Cloud had been faster than him in saying it, he hastily changed his words. "Go to hell. Since Silver Moon escaped, I'll just slay you, instead." Dusky Cloud was ready to attack. "Not if you're the first to go down." Bluey's did not back down, raising the magic staff in his hand. At this moment, some players from either side were feebly asking, "Who's that guy?" This question effectively extinguished the very embers of war that were about to ignite. Plenty of players from either side were newer additions to their respective guilds. On Dusky Cloud's side, the enemy often mentioned was either the arrogant Vast Lushness or the devious Silver Moon. Bluey's was someone who had already been relegated to the mob that constituted Past Deeds as a whole. As for Bluey's, his resentment was directed to the entire 10-guild alliance. Goofy would be Bluey's and his men's first choice for a person to target or to loathe. Dusky Cloud would not even be considered for that position. Above all, it was Silver Moon who had shirked his responsibility and abandoned Past Deeds during those turbulent times that hurt them the most. His name was often mentioned by them in disdain and was largely regarded as the person responsible for the collapse of Past Deeds. The surrounding players' innocuous question about the other party's identity had caused Bluey's and Dusky Cloud to come to their senses. The question floated in either man's mind for quite a while, even as the hot blood pumping through them cooled. The Past Deeds Guild was indeed as what its name suggested, it was already in the past. Bluey's and his men were now residents of Beishi City, and they hardly had any connection with Dusky Cloud and his men from Y City. If there was one thing connecting them, it would be their goal to hunt for Silver Moon. When the saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," flashed through the two men's minds, both of them promptly turned their heads to the side and spat. "Fuck that saying. No way I'm gonna be friends with this hateful guy." Dusky Cloud scornfully glared at Bluey's, as Bluey's contemptuously stared back at Dusky Cloud. The hot-bloodedness of the players hailing from Y City reared its ugly head once more. Just the stare either party shared almost caused a fight to erupt once more. The two were about to hurl insults at each other when some of their men feebly asked, "Are we not going to search for Silver Moon anymore?" Bluey's had been living in Beishi City long enough for the hot-blooded nature he had nurtured in Y City to erode quite a bit. Calming himself down, he glared at Dusky Cloud for a moment before saying, "I don't have time to play with you guys right now, we'll settle this matter once we are done taking care of Silver Moon." With that, he led his men away from the central plaza as he arranged his men for their next move. Kill him now." Seeing the other parties departing back, Celestial Pig somewhat grew anxious. During Past Deeds tyranny, Silver Moon was not the only one who had bullied him so much. Bluey's had also killed him plenty of times back then. Dusky Cloud eyeballed Celestial Pig. "Kill your ass. Let's focus on the matter at hand. That bastard Silver Moon has caused us quite the setback here as well as the lives of many of our men." Dusky Cloud slapped his forehead after saying this and hurriedly shouted, Quickly pass this message: all those players who have died should not rush over and return to their spawn points, instead. If Silvermoon intended to log off at any of these spawn points, would he actually be faster than those men who had died and respawned? Even if Dusky Cloud's men failed to make it in time and ambush Silvermoon outside a spawn point, they could at least try again as long as they knew which log-off point Silvermoon had used to return to reality by leaving some men behind to keep watch. With this thought in mind, Dusky Cloud checked if the players who had died in that last engagement were from the 7 main job classes in Parallel World. He only sighed in relief once he received affirmation of this fact. Hang in there, everyone. Dusky Cloud knew that all were exhausted after staying up the entire night, so he made it a point to encourage them. Following this, he roared, "Inform our guys in Y City to send some motherfucking backups."